Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, beautiful souls. If you are new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome. My name is Brittany. I am your manifesting mentor. I am not a coach, I'm not a guru, but I am a woman who practices this work daily, and I help others to do the same so that they can create and live a life that is more aligned and exactly what they deserve and desire. And if that sounds good to you, you are in the right place. What I share here is absolutely grounded in my own journey of healing, evolution, and of becoming. And tonight we're going to dive into parts 1 through 3 of chapter 5 of Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. This is one of the most pivotal chapters so far. This chapter is called Reconditioning the Body to a New Mind. And we're going to talk about why it's not enough to just change our thoughts. We have to teach our bodies to stop living in the past and start responding to the future instead. And I think that this introduction is a great segue into why, as I mentioned, I decided to read this book and go chapter by chapter, break it down, have live discussions, and answer questions that have been submitted, and also any that come in through the chat, is because it's grounded in my own journey. I have so much respect for Dr. Joe Dispenza. If you are a follower of mine, you followed me from TikTok, or you see my channel on YouTube, I have it in my trailer that my grandmother, I credit her for introducing me to my divinity. She gave me Jesus, is what I like to say. She kept me in the church Monday, Wednesday, Sunday. Well, let me see. Sunday was church. Monday was Bible study. Wednesday was usher board practice and choir rehearsal. So yeah, 3 days a week when I was a little girl. Um, and a lot of that foundation stuck with me, but a lot of the religiosity, I'm sorry, I can't talk. A lot of the religiosity did not, which is fine because as I continued to evolve, I started expanding and learning how other people around the world were discovering and experiencing their divinity. And it just made me less judgmental and critical and more open to the fact that we all exist differently in different regions and we learn different things culturally. And so I have so much respect for Dr. Joe because everything I've learned along my spiritual path, he basically ties it all together with a beautiful bow and marries it with science. And I really appreciate that because it makes it more digestible to understand that we are not separate. We may have different beliefs and backgrounds, and but at the core we're all the same and we want the same essential things, and we can have those things when we learn how to work with our mechanisms and be great stewards of this vessel, aka our bodies. So I'm going to hop into part 1 because I went on a tangent a little bit, but I think it's very fitting to share that about myself as I go into this section of reconditioning the body to a new mind, which is part 1. And I also group that together with a section titled How Energy Gets Stored in the Body. So, some of my talking points are that the body memorizes emotional patterns from the past. And this is very important to understand. We've learned about this in earlier chapters, but that is not enough to just think positive. When I first learned about things like law of attraction, law of assumption, actually before law of assumption, when I learned about law of attraction through platforms or stories like The Secret, the documentary is what I got introduced to. A lot of people learn about the book, but in essence, I learned that your thoughts create things. And while that is absolutely foundationally true, um, as I went along my journey and I started understanding how to apply a lot of what I learned from law of attraction, I started running into roadblocks and I couldn't understand why I kept having these hangups. And it wasn't until fast forward, Neville Goddard, which was another master teacher along my journey, introduced me to the law of assumption and understanding that my assumptions also play a major role in what I assume affects how I show up, affects my emotions, and affects my decision making. because I'm going to make choices based on what I believe, right? So if I believe somebody's trying to do some harm to me, I might make the choice to not approach that person, right? But if I assume they're going to be kind, I may make the choice to approach that person. So understanding that opened the gateway. But it was with Dr. Joe's work that I understood further, because as I practiced law of assumption, I still kept hitting those roadblocks and I recognized patterns and I didn't know what to do with it. But Dr. Joe's teachings, especially this particular chapter, allowed me to not just understand what was happening, but to understand that if I am the cause, I am also the cure, right? Because he says the body memorizes emotional patterns from the past. And even when we want to mentally change, our body can still be addicted to old emotional states. And that's when things were like for me, because I realized that one of the things that brought me to Joe's work was something I was experiencing at the time. I recognized the pattern and I was like, wait a second, I keep doing this whenever something like this and this trigger me. And I started explaining it to people that I care about, like, hey, this is a pattern. I don't know what to do with it. And so here we are. And so Joe teaches in chapter 5 that is once you recognize the pattern, there goes your freedom, right? Therein lies your freedom, because now you're no longer a slave to something that you can't understand. Now you're understanding what it is, because he does an amazing job breaking it down and giving us the science of our anatomy and our bodies and how they work. But now you can actually reverse engineer and do something about it. And how freeing is that? It was my favorite rapper to this day, Jay-Z. Don't debate me. The greatest rapper alive. Don't debate me. But he said, you can't heal what you never reveal. And that will always stick with me. But it's true. Because if you don't recognize what your patterns are, if you constantly, you know, try to cover them up or suppress them or not face them or run from them and think that you're going to distract your way through life to not have to deal with them, you can't ever heal. But the recipe for healing is being able to see it, right? To look in the mirror and not look at the mirror to try to make the mirror change, but look in the mirror so you can see what's been going on and then change what you're doing inside, so that when you look in the mirror, now the reflection that's showing back to you is different. Because why? Because you're different. You started showing up different. So Joe says that when we want to mentally change, and because our bodies have its own memory, our body can still be addicted to old emotional states. And that's what keeps so many people stuck. That's what kept me stuck until I started doing this work. He says energy gets stored in the body through trauma, stress, and repetition. And basically, a memory is always tied to an emotion of some sort. So even if you think about trauma, it's tied to some very intense emotions that one may have experienced as a result of an experience or something that happened, no matter when it happened in their lives. Think about stress. Stress is tied to very strong, intense emotions like anxiety, frustration, repetition of anything is how not only does our human brain learn that way through repetition, but our bodies get conditioned through repetition. And so he says by the time we're 35, we are pretty much hardwired in a set of programs, a set of habits that we have repeated so much that we do it on autopilot. And this is why so many people feel so stuck. And this is exactly how energy gets stored in the body. But he says that true change begins when we become aware of these patterns and we start to interrupt them. As Jay-Z said, once you reveal it, right? He didn't say this, but he said, you can't heal what you never reveal. But once you reveal what the pattern is, now the ball is in your court to not be a victim anymore, but to put your foot down and set some boundaries and say, listen, not on my watch. I'm going to interrupt this pattern. And Dr. Joe does this thing in one of his meditations. If you ever do his online course, the progressive and the intensive, he says, when that familiar feeling starts to creep up, What are you going to do? He says you're going to change. He tells you to say change because he says thoughts that no longer fire together no longer wire together, which means that if we interrupt the pattern, you're interrupting the neurochemistry that happens in your brain that keeps you in that pattern, that loop. You're interrupting it. And every time you interrupt it, you're stopping the pattern, you're stopping the repetition, and you're replacing it with something else. You change, you pivot. Every time you do that, you're breaking the hardwire that's been done. You're breaking that conditioning and you're replacing it with something new. So you're reconditioning your body to a new mind by interrupting the pattern. And I want to get into some of the questions that I got ahead of time. This person says, what does it actually mean to recondition the body? Reconditioning the body means that you're training your body to no longer be reactive from your environment, from people. You're training it to no longer react from a place of past emotional triggers. And that includes fear, shame, anger, guilt, all the things that you could think of that aren't comfortable to linger in, and instead to respond from your future self. So, Dr. Joe is a great proponent for teaching to live your future self now. And he is right on course with all the manifestation coaches and teachers and teachings who talk about embodiment. Even Jesus, like I grew up Christian Baptist, as I mentioned earlier. I may not have mentioned that, but I went to church, but I was Christian Baptist is my foundation. And even Jesus, Christ teaches that when ye pray, believe ye have received and ye shall receive it. What is that telling you to do? It's telling you to be the one who's already received, aka embody it, aka what Neville teaches, live in the end, aka what Joe tells you, live that future when? Now. And so when you condition yourself to feel the feelings of your future instead, he wants you to respond from your future self. He's saying that's like emotional rehab because you literally are breaking past patterns, past habits, and replacing it with something else. And that's exactly what happens in rehabilitation. You're reconditioning yourself to something new, right? It's teaching the body that a new feeling is now safe. Because in essence, your body just wants to feel safe. And its one job is to keep you safe. That's what your subconscious works to do. That's what your autonomic nervous system works to do, keep you alive and keep you safe. And if you have trauma around certain experiences, if you have emotional patterns that you've been living out from past traumas, your body, when it's in certain situations, it's going to be triggered into fight or flight because it doesn't feel safe. You know, if you are someone, for example, people who want to manifest new dynamics in relationships or manifest a specific person, you know, I've been down that path many times before, but it's like if you find yourself manifesting that person, you can do all the rituals, all the things, all the scripting, the techniques, right? To get yourself in alignment with that person. But then the person comes in, and usually what happens is people find themselves back in the same pattern because they haven't done the inner work to change the pattern, the emotional reactions, the things that trigger you. The reason that you're probably in a situation where you need to manifest that person back to begin with is because you got some patterns within you. And those patterns might be justified. They might be tied to certain stories. But as you understand through law of assumption and even Joe's work, that when you change, everything external changes. In Joe's work, he teaches the science behind that. He says you're no longer broadcasting the same electromagnetic frequency. If you change your thoughts and your corresponding emotions, if thoughts and emotions are frequencies, you're changing your signal that you're sending out, which means that whatever is a match to that has to also change so that it matches the new frequency that you're sending out. And so, in essence, you're now conditioning yourself to meet a different outcome. And this is what happens when you are reconditioning your body. You're changing how you exist, the emotional state that you've been practicing that may not be serving you anymore, especially if it's stress or fear or guilt or shame or any of the lower frequencies that produce stress hormones in your body. Remember, all of this is chemical reactions that are happening in our bodies. It's not just thoughts and feelings is what is that thought and feeling loop doing to your physicality? Is it helping you to maintain health, or is it putting you in a situation where your health is deteriorating, or you're not able to fight off a common cold or the flu because your immune system is now being compromised because your emotional thought loop keeps putting those stress hormones in your body, weakening your immune system. So this is all just so illuminating because we didn't know that we were in charge of way more than just manifesting an experience or some money. We're maintaining our existence, and how we exist affects the quality of what we're able to manifest, affects whether or not we're able to be well and be one with the manifestation. Back to the relationship, if you don't change the emotional patterns, you'll get the person temporarily, but then you'll find yourself back in a pattern. Or as Michael Beckwith said, we can manifest temporarily to get things, but are you the person that it takes to maintain it? Because if not, you're gonna temporarily get it, but you'll lose it. And so we are, in essence, in this work, aligning ourselves to be the one, to not just get the healing, but to keep it, to not just get the relationship, but to maintain it and to grow it and to evolve it, to not just get the money, but to grow it and sow it, to not just have the one-off good experience, but to live a life full of amazing experiences. Because when you change your frequency, you change your personality, you change, as Dr. Joe teaches, your personal reality. I hope I answered your question. That was a mouthful. Question number 2: how do I know if my body is still living in the past? Oh, that's a good one. For me, it was recognizing that I was still exhibiting a pattern even when nothing was actually happening out there. Like I was conjuring up memories from my past and freaking myself out in the moment and playing out old patterns, even though what was in front of me might have been something that looked like it was similar to what I had experienced in the past. But in essence, I was probably more so projecting because it didn't have to be that, right? We assign the meaning that everything has for us. So for me, it's like if your reactions feel automatic or you feel triggered, even when your mind understands better, because that's what was happening with me. My mind knew, girl, you safe, you cool. This ain't that. This don't have to be that. You don't have to tell that story. But my body was just like, yeah, no, we not safe. We not safe. It's not safe. And so think about that. If I am not feeling safe in this circumstance or with this person or these people, how is that going to influence my thoughts? I'm going to think more thoughts of not feeling safe. And Dr. Joe says it becomes a loop of not just thoughts, but emotions. What am I going to feel? I'm going to feel unsafe. I'm going to feel anxious. I'm going to feel, you know, just incoherent. I'm not going to feel at peace. I'm going to be playing thoughts over and over again. It's going to be a loop. And that's going to govern the choices that I make. So if you think about it, manifestation is not woo-woo. It's not magic. It's science. It's literally how we're wired. When you feel a certain way, you think certain thoughts, and vice versa. When you think certain thoughts and you feel a certain way, that in essence governs how you show up. It governs how you present yourself. It governs the choices you make. So manifestation is not some magical thing. It's literally way more practical than we've ever given it credit for. So I would say that awareness is always the first step. And then comes gentle, consistent elevation. So if your body, you recognize you're still living in a pattern like I did, I was very much in a pattern of trauma, even when nothing was actually happening in my reality at that moment. I just grew aware of it. And as I said, I was aware of it for a while before I learned Joe's work. Like I was aware of it when I was learning from Neville, but I didn't know what to do about it. Like I just thought I was going to struggle for forever and maybe certain things weren't going to happen for me because I couldn't overcome this pattern. And then Joe taught me, nah, boo, this is science. This is what your body's doing. This is how you're maintaining. This is how you can change. And I started doing the work and noticing the difference. And so once you grow aware, that's the first step. And from there, like you said, you interrupt the pattern. You gently recognize when you're being your old self. and you say, you know what, I said I was gonna stop doing that. Let me just chill. Let me not do that. Let me not jump to those conclusions because that's the old story of the old man, as Neville says. You keep living out the old man's assumptions, you're gonna keep getting the old man's results. So grow aware, gently interrupt the pattern, change your course, and consistent. Just stay consistent as much as possible. It's not a perfect process. You will you will resort back to your old program. It's just, especially when you're in the same environment while you're doing this work. And I think that's why Joe says he does the retreats and he does the different workshops and he takes people out of their environment, puts them in a hotel, in a conference room, somewhere they're not used to meditating. Because when you take somebody out of the environment, they're not triggered by the same thing. So if you can maintain consistency, what you start to learn is you develop a skill. It becomes a new skill where you aren't a puppet to your environment anymore, but instead you learn how to be the calm in the midst of chaos. Because those same people are going to trigger you the same the same way unless you change, unless you decide, I don't want to be the same version of me that gets triggered by that version of you. So if I no longer react, if I no longer allow the same story to play out, if I no longer tell myself the same things that I usually tell myself about you that triggers me, then I'm not going to get the same reaction that I used to get or usually get. So this is how you know you are still living in the past or whether or not you're still living in the past. That was a mouthful. I hope that helped. But it's a process, y'all. Just be gentle, be kind to yourself. Um, don't beat yourself up. No shame, no condemnation. Just keep it moving, recognize and keep it moving. And that's what Joe teaches too. Like, it's so weird though, because growing up, especially growing up Christian Baptist, like for whatever reason, there was a lot of guilt and shame around making mistakes because that's what you learned in the church. At least that's what I did. God is a jealous God. He's angry and he's watching everything you do. And you should be shamed if things don't go right. And at least that was the message I got. But this work is so gracious, it's so forgiving, it's so understanding that the way we learn is through repetition. If I kept doing something for 35 years, it's probably going to be a while before I change that ship around, right? Like change the direction of that ship. If I've been doing this, basically creating the same habits for most of my life, I'm not going to get it overnight necessarily. It might take some time. And so this work is so gracious and it encourages you to stay gracious with yourself and stay gracious with other humans because we are perfectly flawed. All of us have our own traumas, our own stories. Nobody is perfect. We are all overcoming something generationally, especially if you were born in this time frame. A lot of things to overcome generationally. So give yourself grace. Yeah, I'm doing that every day. So I'm going to get into part 2 where Dr. Joe talks about the body as a magnet. And this is the part where I started to understand the science behind not just positive thinking or negative thinking, but my emotional reactions. So Dr. Joe says that the body emits an electromagnetic field, and that field attracts experiences. And I think the first time I heard this or read this, it automatically made me think about what we call an aura, right? Like a lot of people who are super spiritual, they like to say, wow, you have such a beautiful aura. And that was just their way of saying your energy feels really warm and welcoming or things like that. But Joe tells us that it's not just this concept, it's actually something that can be measured. They have an encephalograph, I think is what it's called in the book. But in the middle of the book, he has a lot of inserts with all this data collected from different machines that they use to measure our electromagnetic field around our bodies. And he says that is our signature. Whatever our bodies are emitting is our signature that draws experiences to us. And he says when we live in survival, stress, fear, guilt, shame, we magnetize more of that because that's a part of your signature. If you live in those emotions, what else are you thinking you're going to attract? And that goes for in the form of relationships. You're going to attract people that reflect to you back that stress, that fear, that guilt, that shame. It's not a coincidence. It's all connected. So he says that elevated emotions tune the body to a different frequency. So one that draws opportunities instead of reacting to threats. So when you learn whatever pattern you've been exhibiting and you make a choice to change, when you make that choice to change, you are in essence now able to shift the things that you're drawing onto yourself. And he says one of the things that I'm sorry, he says though, when you practice elevated emotions, for example, if you go from guilt and shame and fear and all the lower frequencies that keep you in a depressed or anxious state, and you start focusing your awareness and attention on the things that bring you more joy, that bring you more elevation and happiness and lighthearted emotions, then you are sending out a totally different frequency. If you ever notice, when the synchronicities happen in your life, they're usually happening when you're, number one, aware enough to recognize them. But number two, you're probably feeling a lot better in your day. You're probably not focused on the things that stress you out when you're able to recognize them. And so this is what helps us understand that we are literally walking magnets. We're walking magnets. And one of the examples I used to use, because I was a grade school teacher, is you ever walk by someone or even rubbed up against something and felt like an electric shock? That's not a coincidence. We are electromagnetic beings. We can have static electricity, almost like something that conducts electricity. We have, think of yourself as like a conductor, basically. That frequency is flowing through you in the form of so many different things, like the functioning of your body, your thoughts, your emotions, which are energy in motion. We are conductors as well. So this is what makes our bodies magnetic. And actually, somebody submitted a question. They were like, what makes the body magnetic? Did you read this book? I'm just, no question is a dumb question. Thank you, though. What makes the body magnetic? As I mentioned, your emotions. Your emotion has a frequency, and your dominant emotional state shapes what you attract. Elevated emotions like gratitude, love, joy expand your electromagnetic field, aka your aura. So you shine brighter. Like if you, people with good energy, they can walk in a room and command attention, like without words. And it's just because their field is much more illuminated, right? It's expanded, as Joe would say. It's more expanded. When you are experiencing lower frequencies, lower emotions, your electromagnetic field shrinks. And that is actually, in essence, how people, he says, when you find yourself with chronic illness or chronic issues, it's usually because you've pulled so much energy from your field that your body no longer has what it needs to recover, to return back to homeostasis when you're in a state of fight or flight. So he says that we're actually drawing from our electromagnetic field, which shrinks it around our bodies, making us less magnetic. So, yeah, that's what makes your body a magnet. Another question came in. It says, what if I've been trying to feel elevated but keep slipping into old emotions? Ooh, baby, this is normal. That is part of the process. That is part of the process. Listen, if it took, Dr. Joe says, by the time we're 35 years old, we are pretty much hardwired into certain emotional patterns and certain habits and ways of being. And he says it's hardwired, which means that it's not going to be as easy to change. It's not as easy to change a new habit as it is to like, it's not as easy to change an old habit as it is a new habit. So basically, the goal is not about perfection, it's about consistency, right? Each time you bring your attention back to the emotion of your future and you like drop the old story and you shift from those negative thoughts, that negative pattern, you are rewiring your brain. You're interrupting the pattern. So my advice is always to just be gentle with yourself, be kind, be patient. You didn't get this way overnight. Les Brown said, your best thinking is what got you here. Your best thinking. And so you didn't get here overnight. So if you want to experience that change, just please be gentle with yourself. It's going to take repetition. It's going to take a lot of reps, just like building muscle in the gym. So if you stay with it, understand that the shift is happening. The fact that you're aware, you're on this path, you're wanting to do something about it, that is letting you know that you are changing. So just because you don't see it happening right away, like it doesn't happen in a lightning bolt. It happens through reps, through time. Like we live in a 3D, right? We live in time space where we have to travel from point A to point B, which takes time. So while you're in that transitionary period, just focus on the reps. Every time I find myself going back, do I pull myself out? Knock me down 9 times, do I get up 10? That's what you want to focus on. And that's how you know that change is absolutely happening. And no, it's not about being perfect. So please get that out of your mind because that's not even a good, healthy thing to have with you on any kind of transformation journey. Because perfection is not, it's not, it's not realistic. Not if you're trying to change a habit, because a habit was formed through repetition. And in order to change it, you need a new habit. You're gonna have to repeat some stuff. So all right, I think I'm going to go into part three. Part three, he talks about evolving the energy into the brain. So he goes from telling us about how um, emotions get stuck in our bodies, and then he tells us that we can recondition our bodies by practicing new habits, interrupting the pattern, giving our minds and bodies something new to repeat and focus on. But then he starts talking about in part three how we can use that energy that's no longer being put out into our external world, the people, the circumstances, the issues, the problems. And when we conserve our energy and bring it back here, and we place our attention and awareness on the different energy centers, we're now recharging our bodies basically from the quantum field. We're placing the energy back where it belongs. We're instead of shrinking our electromagnetic field, we're now making it more expansive by drawing our attention and awareness back within. But then he says we can do some really cool things that we probably didn't know we can do when we conserve our energy and bring it back within. He says when energy rises to the brain, it activates higher centers like intuition, creativity, and inspiration. And this is very key because most people's energy is stuck in survival mode, lower centers that are tied to fear, control, and lack. When we elevate energy through breath, through meditation, coherence, and presence, this is how we move from the old self into the new identity. But not just that, this is how we move from just being regular degulars to being or becoming supernatural. Remember, he talked about intuition, like being higher, intuition, creativity, inspiration. Like when we supercharge those things, we're not just moving with the basic laws of the land, we're literally collapsing time and space. People are able to do some miraculous things that have their doctors scratching their heads, that have people in their lives wondering how the heck did that happen in such a synchronistic way. It's because so much of our energy is out there, right? When we're focused on the problems, the circumstances, the people, the patterns, the trauma, the stories, we're depleting our energy field. And now, instead of doing that, we're doing the opposite. But now he's telling us this is when we move it back up to the brain through he does what he calls the breath. There's a breath in this meditation, reconditioning the body to a new mind. But what it does is it helps you to get some of the energy that's been stuck in the first three energy centers, the root chakra, the sacral, and the solar plexus, because he says that that's where most of us use a lot of our energy when we're in survival mode. A lot of that energy gets stuck in the first three centers. But the breath, he has you to squeeze your muscles in a particular way. And if you read the chapter, you know what I'm talking about. Um, but you're not just squeezing your lower centers, you're actually releasing energy, because when you stop doing that exercise that he gets you to do, holding the breath, squeezing your energy, all that, you start to feel a release in your body, and he has you to do it multiple times, and you start feeling lighter every time I do this breath. I don't care what kind of day I've had, I don't care what kind of stress I'm feeling in my body. By the time I've done this breath exercise about 5 to 6 times or repetitiously, sometimes I go longer if I'm feeling that intense emotionally. But every time I do it, it releases all that tension in my body. It releases all of those lower frequencies from my body. And he says that when we continue to do this, we are literally reconditioning the body to a new mind, because our bodies is not, they're not exhibiting the same patterns when we use the breath to get whatever energy has been stuck unstuck. And he's saying that's how we move from the old self into the new identity. Again, guys, this is like a major part of the teachings for Dr. Joe. If you ever find yourself going to a workshop or any of his, if you like tune into his online coursework, progressive or advanced workshops, the breath, blessings of the energy centers, the breath, and I think maybe one other thing, those are the main parts of the teachings of all of his teachings. Like you do those two things, at least those two things will change. I'm doing those two things, and I mostly do blessings of the energy centers, and everything is so very different. And I don't mean outside there, like in my world. I mean in me. Like I exist differently. I exist more harmoniously, more at peace. I handle conflicts so very different than what I used to. Like I used to freak the hell out, y'all. Like I used to be an anxious wreck, and I laugh now, but it wasn't a laughing matter. It was something that would keep me up at night. I would cry about it, and now I'm laughing about it. That's how different, because it feels like a totally different life. Feels like a totally different person than the person that I am today. And I credit a lot of that with this work. So I did get a question, and if anybody has questions, drop it in the chat. Even if you drop it, you're watching the replay, I definitely talk back. I answer questions in following my follow-up live. So this person submitted a question and said, why does Dr. Joe focus so much on moving energy to the brain? As I started to explain, Dr. Joe does this because when you stop reacting from a memory and start creating from vision, things change. He says a brain charged with elevated energy becomes more coherent, and coherence makes you magnetic to your desired future. So the whole purpose of him helping you to get that energy unstuck from the first three centers is to get you to move it up through all the other centers all the way to the brain, because he says once you get it to the brain, you're literally creating there's a as you get further in the teachings, there's a pineal gland meditation, because when you move the energy up to the brain and you get it to go past the pineal gland, it's something called the piezoelectric effect. And it's like your pineal gland has these little small crystals that when fluid strikes them, it kind of creates like I've heard people describe it as like a psychedelic effect. So if you've ever done like shrooms or anything like that, I don't know if you have. If you haven't, if you ever got high on marijuana, I don't know if you have. No judgment here, but people are able to have transcendental experiences when they move the energy from lower frequencies all the way up to the brain, and they credit it to helping them evolve their spirituality in a sense that they feel more whole, more love, more um, just the truth of who they are, authenticity. And so part of why it's at the core of his teachings is not only does it get that energy unstuck and keep you basically pulling you out of a pattern. That's why it's called reconditioning the body to a new mind. He's helping you pull yourself out of a pattern, but he's also helping you to tap into some of your abilities that as a human being, a lot of us aren't taught that we have. And some of us, will never learn that we have these abilities because of religion or lack of tuning into the information, or just not being a seeker, of the information. But whatever the case is, like, I feel like everybody on the planet doesn't have to know this information. If just a few million people know this information, which they do, because Joe has a decent following at this point, but enough of us doing it collectively can change and raise the frequency of the planet and change so much, not just in our personal lives, but in the planet, because When you as an individual exist better, exist well, there's a domino effect. Everybody in your life benefits from you being your higher self, being your most energetic, your most healthy, your most loving, your most, thriving self. Everybody in your life benefits from that. And guess what? They have a life of their own too. And they have people in their lives too. So it becomes like a domino effect that when a handful of us can do this work, that's more than enough. So yeah, I went on another tangent. But let me answer this second question that came in. Someone says, what is one way I can tell if my energy is shifting upwards? I would say if you just recognize a deeper sense of peace, like I said, wholeness, joy, more gratitude for just being alive. Because like so many of us want things. We come into learning about things like Dr. Joe's work because we want healing or we want a better job or more money or we just want to shift things and have change. We want to get something. But very rarely do people come into it just already feeling whole and complete. We come in it to get something. But what I notice is the people that do this work, they realize after doing the work that it's not about what you get. It's just about being grateful that I am here, that I am, right? Like that of all the different combinations of human beings to populate the earth, the divine chose me to be one of them. And so many people, if you watch the stories of transformation on Dr. Joe's channel, you'll hear the gratitude just for existing. That's like the underlying theme. They stop chasing the healing. They stop chasing the thing, the manifestation, the job, the money, the romance, the whatever the thing is they're after. And they just focus on being, right? They focus on being and being in gratitude and being their authentic self, before the world and their experiences and their trauma told them who to be. They get back to that and they are just grateful. And the more I do this work and the more I show up here to help other people, I am just grateful that I get to do this, that I get to be here, that the divine put it on my consciousness to do something like this. Like I'm grateful that it's me. Like YouTube exists. Like I'm able to reach people that I would never know because they don't live near me. They're not in my region. Like I'm grateful. And I think when you feel a sense of peace, inspiration, and just in your emotional space, you just feel that gratitude. I think that's when you'll know. When you're less reactive and you're more observant, when you start to pause instead of being really reactive at something and you begin making choices from alignment instead of impulse. That was a big one for me, actually, because one thing I love is I am definitely my grandmother and my mama's daughter and granddaughter because I love fashion. I love clothes. I feel like it's a great way to express myself. And baby, at one point, I had every shopping app. This is transparency moment, y'all. Don't judge me. I had every shopping app you could think of that the fly girls would shop at on my cell phone. And I had to recognize when I was purchasing something out of impulse versus just really thinking about, is this really aligned for me in this moment? Does this make sense to make this purchase? Am I going to wear this? Or am I just doing it because it's trendy? Or am I just doing it because, as my grandma would say, that money was burning your pockets? Am I doing it out of habit, of impulse? Like, oh, I need this. Or is it really aligned? So you'll start to notice slight changes in your everyday choices and how you show up. And I would say that is how you'll know that your energy is shifting from what you might have conditioned yourself to if it was depression or stress or anxiety. You'll start to notice you exist very differently. And it's an upward trend. So yeah, guys, chapter 5 is that girl, very much so. And we only hit parts 1 through 3. I have part 4 and 5 being uploaded probably tonight, if not tonight, tomorrow morning. And that will prepare us as we go into Friday's live. I would say that concludes the tonight's breakdown of parts 1 through 3. But I do want you to walk away with something to think about for the rest of this week. I want you to know that it's not about controlling your emotions. It's about liberating them. I shared a post earlier, or maybe it was last week, where I talked about a very emotional day that I had, and I did not allow myself to suppress or ignore my emotions or try to control my emotions. I just let them be. I became aware that they were there. I let them exist there graciously. And that is what allowed me to release them. I let myself feel. I cried the cry. The tears came. And then once I got that out of me, it was like, oh, my body was like, oh, I can feel safe to express my emotions. And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. It's not about controlling them. Your body has been your loyal protector this entire time. It's your best friend, and you need to treat it like it is your best friend. Because no matter what you want to manifest, no matter what you think you're after in this life, you can't enjoy any of it if this body is not intact. You just can't. Think about anybody who has any kind of health, chronic issue. I remember Steve Jobs said it while he was battling cancer that, all the success he had, what he created with Apple, all the billions of dollars that he had, by the time he got cancer and he was on his last leg, none of that mattered. So please treat your body as the loyal companion, protector that it has been for you. Um, it's held your pain, your stress, and your fear. Give it grace. Give it grace. Now it's time to teach your body how to feel love, how to live in peace, how to recognize joy as safe. And that's how we recondition the body to a new mind. And I created a playlist to help guide you through every chapter. So if you have not been all caught up from the very introduction at the very top of the playlist, all the way down, it contains every single live I've done thus far, and I will continue to do so. It's linked in my TikTok bio, my YouTube description. It should be in the description of this video. If not, please just go to my YouTube channel. It's the only playlist that I have that's public. Um, yeah, just tap the Becoming Supernatural link and join me there. Again, even if you're catching a replay of something, I do respond to comments. If there's a question that's relevant for me to share with the audience in my next live, I will do so. So you will have your answers to whatever questions you may have as you're on this journey. Um, yeah, parts 4 and 5 are coming. We'll discuss it on Friday night. So stay close, stay elevated, and I will see you soon. And I thank you so much for being on this journey with me, because you could be doing anything in the world, but you're here. And it says a lot about you. So thank you for showing up for you. I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And we just getting started. Until next time, guys, I will see you on Friday night and in the comments and on my TikTok. Remember this. You got this. See you next time, guys.